A word for morning prayer today. Grace. I have sometimes heard grace described as God's riches at Christ's expense. It is the favour of God which invites us to know Him personally. Despite our own failings, the largeness of God's heart draws us to Him. One of my favourite Welsh hymns is called Gwahoddiad, which means invitation. And I'll never forget seeing a video of Cerys Matthews singing this hymn with her band at an open-air concert in Wales, and all the crowd singing and holding up their hands as in worship. It reminded me of the last great awakening in Wales, as evangelists like Evan Roberts and Seth Joshua held meetings which opened with heartfelt singing before preaching in the Spirit with the old Welsh hurled. In today's Old Testament reading, the first chapter of the prophet Jonah, Jonah struggled with this grace being made available to other nations as he received a burden from God to warn a large city 800 miles away about the righteousness of God. The city, Nineveh, which is now in ruins across the Tigris River from the modern city of Mosul in Iraq. Then it was a terrible threat to Israel. It was a city of foreigners which he decided did not deserve the goodness of God, so he sailed west in the opposite direction. But it was grace that the storm which blew up around the ship stopped Jonah fleeing. Something about the storm gave the sailors the impression that this was personal. This wasn't an ordinary storm. This was just for them. Someone on the ship had made the gods angry, so they gathered everyone and discovered Jonah's secret. But it was the grace of God that provided a way back for Jonah and an end to the storm for all of them. In the New Testament reading, from the 3rd chapter of Peter's second letter, we are encouraged while waiting for the final redemption to be peaceful, keeping a clean life, and to remember the patience of God. We are advised to be careful how we read Scripture, not to twist it and get carried away and become unstable, but to grow in grace and to know Jesus more. If we are alive, we grow. It is an essential sign of life. You cannot make yourself grow. It is the gift of God. Just like grass growing on the fields, feeding on the light of the sun, we grow naturally in the light of God's Son. The grace of God feeds us grace upon grace. Just like the mercy of God we need in prayer, the grace of God gives us life. And just as we have freely received grace from God, we share this grace with others, not just here at church, but at home, at work, with strangers, bikers, tourists, and anyone who crosses our path, because we are made in the image of God, so we reflect His heart as well. So a word for morning prayer today is grace.